One Piece chapter 1142 is here, and it was amazing from the beginning to the end. Non-stop reveals and action and awesomeness. But first, a shout out to today's sponsor, Factor. Factor makes meeting your nutrition goals easier than ever by delivering fresh, never frozen, dietitian approved meals right to your doorstep. Their team of gourmet chefs creates each meal using only ingredients with integrity to help you feel your best all day long. My family goes through waves of busyness. There are times where I'm happy to cook a meal, and then there are times where I just really wish there would be leftovers in the fridge so that I didn't have to worry about it. And on those days, just grabbing a Factor meal out of the fridge, not having to go to the grocery store, not having to do meal prep, not having to do cleanup, it is so nice. And they have over 35 meals to choose from a week, including options like keto, calorie smart, vegan and veggie, and more. And Factor is super flexible. You can have between 8 to 14 meals delivered a week, or you can pause or reschedule deliveries. Each meal can be heated up in 2 minutes. It's delicious, it's convenient, and it's customizable. So head over to factor75.com or click the link below and use my code 50MurphyNapier to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. That's 50MurphyNapier at factor75.com to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. Thank you to Factor for sponsoring this video, and thank you to you for checking them out. Back to the video. Starting with the very beginning with the snake attack. And I love Oda's art style as he draws these nightmares. From the first panel that we see the snake thing, we know that something has happened. Like the art style is distinct enough that we can tell this is probably something to do with the devil fruit. Though what isn't revealed just yet. And I didn't know until it was just, spelled out for me. But it looks amazing. So the children are under attack. They're screaming for their teachers. We're introduced to Mr. Blade and Principal Tusk. Principal Tusk just shows off. He's just like, hello, I've been introduced. Nice to meet you. Time for me to attack this nightmare. So we know that the nightmare is sentient. We know that it not only, well, I guess we don't know it's sentient, but we know that it's physical. We know that it has tangibility to it, that you can actually physically touch it and interact with it, which is terrifying. These aren't just apparitions that are here to scare you. They can interact with you, they can attack, they can leave a teacher bloody on the floor, a poor Mr. Wolf bloody on the floor, and you too can attack it, as we see with Principal Walrus. Was that his name? I've already forgotten. Principal Tusk and Saul. And I love this full page spread of Tusk running at Snake and uppercut, beating it with an uppercut, and then Saul coming in from above and bashing it down with his hockey and his might. What a great introduction to what the nightmares are going to be, as well as immediately introducing us to the physicality that these nightmares hold, so that when we see them en masse in the sky from the back, from afar, coming forward toward us, we know what the actual threat here is. That's just good storytelling on Oda's part. That's just good storytelling to introduce us to the one. Let us see what a threat it is. Let us see that it is actually something that we can physically interact with and that can physically harm people, and then show the army of them coming forward later on so we understand the full impact of that. It's really good. Then we see the kids' reactions, which I do think is actually pretty important here. The fact that they are surprised that their principal was once a fighter, that they're impressed, or they seem impressed. Some seem scared, some seem impressed. That the rumors are true, that Saul is also a force to be reckoned with. Remember, these children have been brought up in extreme pacifism, like not even being willing to, supposedly the concept is, not even being willing to insult someone because that's viewed as some kind of violence. So their history of being a warrior race, seeing the older generation who they know grew up as a warrior race, they see the older generation in action, and that's surprising to see it actually playing out and not just in theory. Then we have Mr. Wolf bloody on the ground, and this is where we get more of the layers of what's actually happening. We see the children being led away by the arrows as they're sleepwalking, and then once they sound the alarm, we see the other children. So it's the two, this was confusing to me at first. My patrons helped me work it out. We have the two groups of children, the kids that were inside the school and the kids that were outside the school. The kids that were inside the school were put to sleep right away and led out with Gunko's arrow. And the kids outside of the school, I suppose, this is what I think happened. I think when the kids fell asleep, the nightmares were immediately activated, and then the snake nightmare disrupted the plan by making the kids freak out and call for the teachers. Then when the teachers were called and we saw that Mr. Wolf had been attacked, probably by the snake nightmare, and the snake nightmare was probably coming up to attack the rest of the teachers, but the children saw it first, and that messed up the plan. That's how I'm reading in between the lines of how this all figured out. Then, as the teachers are talking to Mr. Wolf and trying to find the other children, then the kids that were initially outside at the beginning of the chapter that saw the snake, now they've fallen over and now they're falling asleep too. So the children are being put to sleep in waves, and the nightmares are being activated to attack the teachers that are around them. And then we first see the other nightmares have been activated. We see the wolf and the bird thing off in the distance. And then after we see them off in the distance, then we notice that the other children have fallen asleep. So we get the correlation that more nightmares were brought to life at the same time that these more children were put to sleep. So we're kind of seeing it, like, before it's all fully laid out for us in the chapter, we're seeing the pattern. We're seeing how the nightmares being activated and the children falling asleep are directly tied together. I just think that that's so clever. That's so smart, the way Oda laid all this out. Then in the underworld, we have Loki standing up. We're picking back up with him, and he says, "You thought that leaving one leg trapped in the sea prism stone would contain the true extent of my power? That was foolish of you. If you want to save Elbaf, undo the final cuff now. You'll soon see if I'm really helpless or not in this condition." Okay, first of all, the sea prism stone should weaken him significantly. The fact that he can pick up this giant hammer and attack while still cuffed even in one leg, I feel like that's really significant. Like, Loki is unbelievably strong, and you can also see the scale of him here with Hadruden right there in front of him, and still Loki towers over him. So we are so quickly impressed with how mighty he is, with how large he is. His presence is so domineering. And when he says, "If you want to save Elbaf, undo the final cuff now," my question is, save Elbaf from you? Are you threatening I'm going to destroy Elbaf if you don't? Because that's what it comes off to me as. I don't think Loki's ultimate goal is to destroy Elbaf. If it were, then after he allegedly attacked, I think he did, his dad, he wouldn't have taken to sea. He would have stayed in Elbaf and continued to cause death and destruction, but he left. So I think the only reason he's attacking now is as leverage, let me free. I also think that right about now, during this amazing spread where he is drawing back his hammer, attacking the tree, lightning bolts flying down, fire lighting up, and we know that that's Elbaf's greatest weakness. As we're watching all this happen, I have a feeling Zoro's like, I did say to wait. I did say, like, we don't make a move right away. Do you remember that? Do you remember that conversation? Remember everyone warning you that this guy was bad news? Luffy? First of all, I want to point out that the art in this chapter is astonishing. Not only the change in art style for the nightmares, but also the lighting and the impact, the strength that we're seeing off of Loki and the damage that he causes, the effect that it's causing on Elbaf itself is significant. Like, Oda knocked it out of the park with this chapter. But also, I do wonder if So Elbaf is aware, I'm almost certain they would be aware of exactly how powerful this hammer is. So already it seemed a bit silly to me to leave Loki's weapon just lying right next to him while he's in captivity. Sure, he's covered head to toe in sea prism stone, so he's probably not getting free, so I understand the threat isn't that strong. But now that I see how unbelievably powerful the hammer is, I feel like we could have moved it. So my question is, are we following Norse mythology so closely that only Loki can lift the hammer? Again, I'm not that well read on Norse mythology, but only Loki can lift the hammer. Like, Loki is the one that can lift the hammer. Like, Loki is the one that can lift the hammer. Like, Loki is the one that can lift the hammer. Like, Loki is the one that can lift the hammer. Like, Loki is the one that can lift the hammer. Like, Loki is the one that can lift the hammer. Like, Loki is the one that can lift the hammer. Like, Loki is the one that can lift the hammer. Like, Loki is the one that can lift the hammer. Like, Loki is the one that can lift the hammer. Like, Loki is the one that can lift the hammer. Like, Loki is the one that can lift the hammer. Like, Loki is the one that can lift the hammer. Like, Loki is the one that can lift the hammer. Like, Loki is the one that can lift the hammer. Like, Loki is the one that can lift the hammer. Like, Loki is the one that can lift the hammer. Like, Loki is the one that can lift the hammer. Like, Loki is the one that can lift the hammer. Like, Loki is the one that can lift the hammer. Like, Lo the only one can lift this hammer, right? The hammer that Loki's hammer is inspired by. So I'm wondering if the reason it's right next to him still is because wherever Loki dropped it is where it lays. No one can move it but him. So we have children being kidnapped on one side of the island, lightning strikes and fire happening on another side of the island. So we have two extreme emergencies happening all together. It's not Elbaf's best day. And that's where things finally come together when we see the scene with the language teacher having the kids draw out their nightmares. What is, maybe not even nightmares, she may have just asked, what is the thing that scares you, the most scary thing, the most intimidating thing that you can think of? Go ahead and draw it out. We're gonna journal it. We're gonna process it together. I'm pretty sure this is normal therapy stuff to do with kids, or just normal, like, you know, you talk about the things that scare you and we process it so that it's not all bottled up and scary, and we talk about the things that are good. So they're all naming off their different fears, to include this one kid's mom, which is just hilarious. Yeah. It actually says it right here. All of these things are what the children drew based on the prompt of what they were afraid of. And because she actually saw the drawings, she can identify them right away. This is exactly what they drew. These are their nightmares. These are their greatest fears. So, and it is notable too, that when the children are discussing, at the beginning of the discussion of what they're afraid of, one kid brought up Loki, who has his huge hammer. He destroys the world. And then another kid argues that the one who destroys the world is Nika. So I think paralleling these two in the kids' minds is interesting on several levels. One, to the adult giants, Loki is the one that all the different giants want to emulate. They want to emulate, Luffy. Sun God Nika is the one that the adult giants want to emulate. They each have a different idea of, or a different facet of, what Sun God Nika represents, and what part of him they think is the biggest part and that they want to emulate. We saw that several chapters ago. So they look up to Sun God Nika and they look down on Loki. They see Loki as the greatest threat, as a manipulator, as a liar, as someone who could potentially destroy all of Elbaf. And the children, some of them agree with looking at Loki as a destroyer, and some of them actually see Nika as the destroyer. So I think this is Oda intentionally drawing them as parallels and as potential opposites, or rather two sides of the same coin. Both are capable of great destruction and great power, and maybe we're going to see the different ways in which they wield that ability. And there's a lot of different directions that Oda could take that, but also the fact that it seems pretty much unanimously the older generation, the once warrior generation, views Sun God Nika as someone to look up to. Yet in the younger generation that have been raised with extreme pacifism, they view Sun God Nika as something scary, as something, or at least some of them look at him as their greatest fear. I do think that fate could very likely be a major theme in this story, so also drawing that distinction between Loki and Luffy could be a big player in how Oda plays with the concept of fate. Anyway, we turn the page and that's when we get to see the nightmares in full form. These things are a version of the world that terrifies the children most. What an awesome concept! What a cool use of devil fruit! What an amazing threat that Oda has now introduced into this situation, into the world of Elbaf. It's on fire, there's walking nightmares coming toward them, physical manifestations of fear, of terror are walking toward them, and children are being kidnapped. So we have three major threats that have all been introduced in one chapter. And it seems that we're watching all three of these devil fruits being used in unison to capture these children and create these, or at least two of the three threats. We have Killingham, who is a narcoleptic, and we can see him kind of going in and out of sleep even as he has this dialogue. So he's the one that put the children to sleep. It seems Summers is the one that's manifesting their, or bringing to life their greatest fears. The reason is because of his dialogue here. He says, To know love is to wound one another. Say, Gunko, are you afraid of anything? So that dialogue kind of indicates to me that he's the one that manifests the fear, because he's teasing Gunko, however you say her name. He's teasing her with his ability, like, what if I were to pull fear out of you? What would I pull? And she said Nika, which is also very fascinating. And then we see her arrow of fate guiding the children. So I think that we could potentially speculate that Oda is going to take these new devil fruits that he's introduced in these last couple of chapters and tie them into the themes of the story. I think Oda's really good about doing that, about tying really significant devil fruits into the theming. Once he introduces major threats, the way those threats are introduced are tied into the theming. That's something that he is really, really skilled at. And so we can pull from this chapter and wonder, is fate from Gunko, her arrows of fate, is this going to be a major theme in the story? How much do we decide fate? How much can we fight against fate? How much power do we have over the ties of fate? And as well as fears, our greatest fears, facing them, overcoming them, and what that would look like. It's certainly possible that we're going to watch the Straw Hats face their fears. I think it's very possible that the motivation behind King Harold in the first place, changing the entire cultural shift for Elbaf, that was motivated by fear. It could be that the thing that set everything into motion, all these changes that we've seen, all this subversion that we've seen, it could be that began with fear itself. I've kind of speculated that King Harold had nefarious intent with changing everything, but it's possible that it was actually just a fearful reaction instead of nefarious intent. It's also possible that Loki acted on fear when he attacked his father, fear of what his father was turning the country into. It could go in that direction as well. And again, the juxtaposition that that Oda has put before us with Loki and Luffy could be very well associated with, could tie into these themes as well. There's a lot of different directions that Oda could go with this. I feel like my brain is on fire alongside of Elbaf right now, thinking about all the implications that have begun with introducing these themes, with introducing these threats, with introducing these 3 different major, cataclysmic, huge, emergency level threats all at once. The direction that the arc could go in physically and thematically, the action that we're probably about to be thrust into. Oda really has kind of just opened up the landscape for so many options here, and he could take it in so many different directions, and each one looks equally as exciting to me. I really loved this chapter. Also, this guy is my favorite of the nightmares. Which one is yours? Oh, I feel really overwhelmed. This chapter really excited me a lot. Okay, what do you think? What did I miss? What do you disagree with? What do you agree with? I would love to continue chatting with you in the comments, so please do chat with me more. I'll see you again soon. Bye. Also, Shanks. He took down Loki himself. What kind of power is that?